The finale of The Mandalorian Season 3 was certainly one of the episodes of all time, with a fair few great moments and a fair few questionable creative choices. One of the more surprising moments was the destruction of the Darksaber, which, after being the subject of so much drama over the course of the series, was crushed like some cheap plastic knockoff. Many fans were dismayed to see the Darksaber go, but we would argue that its destruction was a blessing in disguise for the Mandalorians. In this video, we'll explain why.
Attention, Sergeant on deck!
The Darksaber first appeared in Star Wars: The Clone Wars, and at first, it was really just a cool lightsaber. It was clear that the weapon was unique and had a backstory, as Pre Vizsla mentioned that his ancestors had stolen it from the Jedi, but it wasn't until later in the series that the Darksaber was established as a symbol of leadership for the Death Watch. Star Wars Rebels expanded upon its backstory and significance, crediting its creation to Pre Vizsla, the first Mandalorian Jedi. After his death, the Darksaber was stolen from the Jedi Temple by Clan Vizsla and became the symbol of the leaders of the Mandalorians. The rightful owner of the Darksaber was held to be the rightful ruler of Mandalore by many Mandalorians, but as the Mandalorian has established, rightful ownership of the weapon could only be claimed through combat. Any Mandalorian could challenge the Darksaber's current owner for the weapon, and the blade would belong to the stronger of the two. While this rule was notably broken several times, the Mandalorians believed that claiming the Darksaber without having won it in combat would bring ruin to Mandalore, a belief that was seemingly validated by the Great Purge. It's a cool enough story, but to fans of the old expanded universe, it might sound familiar. That's because the Darksaber isn't the first Mandalorian trinket to be passed down as a token of leadership. Its role in canon Mandalorian society is quite similar to the role the Mask of Mandalore had in Legends. In Legends, the Darksaber wasn't nearly as significant as it was in canon. It only represented the leadership authority of Clan Vizsla and the Death Watch, who represented only a splinter of Mandalorian society. The Mask of Mandalore, on the other hand, was far more significant. Carved from the breastbone of a slain mythosaur, the Mask of Mandalore was created by Mandalore I, who led the Tongs to the jungle planet that bore his name and remade them into Mandalorians. In the time of the Old Republic, this mask was the symbol of the rulers of Mandalore, and like with the Darksaber in canon, any Mandalorian who claimed the mask was by rights the lord of all Mandalorians. Unlike with the Darksaber, the mask didn't have to be won in combat. Rather, it belonged to whoever happened to take it first when Mandalore was slain. Legends, or canon, Mandalorians loved their trinkets, enough to base leadership of their entire civilization solely on possession of them. But as Moff Gideon said, it was neither the Darksaber nor the mask that actually mattered. It was the stories behind them and what they represented. And even though they seem very similar, the stories that the Darksaber and the mask told were different in a few key ways. It's those nuances that made the Darksaber a toxic influence on Mandalorian culture, whereas the Mask of Mandalore is an example of a much better unifying symbol. When you get down to it, the story of the Darksaber is a story of individual strength and glory. It can only be won in combat, theoretically ensuring that only the strongest can rule the Mandalorians. Any Mandalorian could challenge the current holder of the Darksaber for possession of the weapon, and on at least one occasion, this challenge resulted in the death of one of the combatants. Most losers in a battle for the Darksaber were killed, though the Mandalorians earned points for not making this a requirement. Claim over the Darksaber is also a matter of individual pride and glory. Taking the weapon is seen as a personal accomplishment, and the individual who possesses the blade is revered as the greatest of all Mandalorians. The Mask of Mandalore, on the other hand, belonged to whoever happened to pick it up after Mandalore died. No combat was required, and indeed, challenging the reigning Mandalore for the sole purpose of taking the mask was seen as dishonorable by some Mandalorians, as the Mandalorians' creed demanded obedience to the reigning Mandalore, and challenges to their authority required more substance than the vain pursuit of power. Rather, claim over the mask was really luck of the draw, something that any Mandalorian stood a chance of getting. This carries the implicit message that all Mandalorians are inherently worthy of being Mandalore, regardless of whether they were the absolute best. The Mandalorians of Legends believed that all of their societal roles came with honor and were necessary. The simplicity of how the reigning Mandalore was chosen emphasized that leadership was just another job, disincentivizing Mandalorians from fixating on it. The Mask of Mandalore also differed from the Darksaber in that claiming the mask involved a surrender of one's personal identity. Those who wore the Mask of Mandalore gave up their names, taking the name of Mandalore instead. To own the Mask of Mandalore required Mandalorians to essentially become someone else. While the Darksaber brought glory to the names of its wielders, the Mask of Mandalore incorporated the glory of its owners into the legend of Mandalore, and the Mandalores who wore it were expected to dedicate their lives not to their own power, but to the Mandalorians as a whole. The Darksaber enhanced the stories of its owners. The Mask of Mandalore incorporated its owners' stories into that of the Mandalorian people. These subtle differences mean that the effects the stories of these two artifacts had on Mandalorian society were almost opposite. The Darksaber was inherently divisive. It represented an almost Sith-like cult of the strong ideology, teaching Mandalorians that the only true strength was victory in combat, and encouraging constant infighting over the title of the strongest Mandalorian. The Mask of Mandalore, however, was a symbol of unity. It did not require Mandalorians to prove themselves in killing each other. Rather, it taught that all true Mandalorians were strong and worthy. It came with implicit lessons about leadership as just another responsibility, and it required its owners to put the Mandalorians first and themselves second. The Darksaber was a toxic influence because the lesson its story was meant to teach is wrong. Individual combat strength isn't everything. There are many different facets of strength, and the vast majority of beings will be lacking in some of them. Genuine strength comes from unity and collaboration, which pulls together a variety of strengths. Even then though, strength isn't a guarantee of victory. Even the strongest will be defeated from time to time, even the Mandalorians. True strength is not being forever undefeated, because that's an unachievable goal. It requires confronting defeat and using it as a learning experience. This isn't a lesson the Darksaber could teach, but it's one the Mask of Mandalore could. Mandalore the Ultimate, widely recognized as the greatest Mandalorian to ever live, claimed the mask while he was still a lowly warrior after his people had been utterly routed in the Battle of Onderon. He became Mandalore purely because he had the luck to find the chewed up body of Mandalore the Indomitable first. This luck elevated an ordinary warrior to rule of all Mandalore, a position he used to bring the Mandalorians to the peak of their power. The story of the Mask of Mandalore taught that there was opportunity in defeat so long as the Mandalorians remained unified. The Darksaber, in encouraging constant infighting and a narrow perception of strength, weakened the Mandalorians. It's a good thing then that it was destroyed. Something like the Mask of Mandalore would be a better symbol of leadership, but it would be even better if the Mandalorians gave up their dependence on trinkets entirely. Artifacts can be taken or even lost, and when that happens, the stories attached to them go with them. In Legends, when Revan took the Mask of Mandalore at the end of the Mandalorian Wars and prevented a new Mandalore from being chosen, it tore the Mandalorians apart, destroying them more thoroughly than any war could have. The Mandalorians needed their stories and legends to define themselves. Everyone does, from individuals to the largest of groups. But it's always better if that story is attached not to objects, nor to individual leaders, but to the people, because it's the people together that matter, not the symbols they use for themselves. In the words of Mandalore the Destroyer, "Here's why you can't exterminate us, Ariti. We're not huddled in one place. We span the galaxy. We need no lords or leaders, so you can't destroy our command. We can live without technology, so we can fight with our bare hands. We have no species or bloodline, so we can rebuild our ranks with others who want to join us. We're more than just a people or an army, Arieti. We're a culture, we're an idea, and you can't kill ideas. But we can certainly kill you. In general, the Mandalorians and Legends placed much less emphasis on leadership and succession than those in canon, as did the Children of the Watch in The Mandalorian. For Bo-Katan and her followers, that's something to be learned from both of them. At the end of the day, it's not about who rules, but that the Mandalorians endure. This is the way. But that, of course, is just our take. What do you think about the death of the Darksaber? Do you prefer the Darksaber or the Mask of Mandalore? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. And as always guys, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.